My parents gave my sister $400,000 for her wedding as a gift. Offered to pay for mine but then sent me an email that would change everything. The invitation arrived with a polite note from my mom. "We hope you understand. Your sister has requested a private ceremony." I read it twice. A pang of disbelief ran through me. The truth was, I had already spent months planning my wedding. I had saved every penny, worked extra hours, and even helped them with bills over the years. Yet now, my own family treated me like an afterthought. I stared at the email, scrolling down to the bottom. My dad had added, "We are very proud of your sister. She deserves this." Deserves this? I scoffed aloud, imagining the $400,000 being spent on her perfect day while I got a curt email. My heart ached, but anger was starting to simmer. The first thing that came to mind was my childhood memory of helping them financially. I had loaned them money quietly, never asking for repayment. My sister, on the other hand, always seemed to be the golden child, the favored one. Every decision they made, it was for her benefit. Every gift, every praise, every opportunity. And now this wedding? It was the final straw. I called my best friend, Mia, pacing my small apartment. "Mia, can you believe this? I've spent years helping them and now this," I vented. She listened patiently, then said, "You know what you need to do, right? Don't just sit there, make them understand." The planning began immediately. I opened my laptop, pulling up spreadsheets, contacts, and my savings account. I had always been smart with my money, financially independent. Now, I had a chance to use that independence to my advantage. I would show them that the same generosity they took for granted could come back in a way they never expected. I contacted a small boutique wedding planner, explaining my situation without revealing my anger. "I want something intimate but unforgettable," I said. She promised discretion. I smiled to myself, thinking of the irony. They thought I was sidelined, but I was quietly building something even more spectacular than what they imagined. Meanwhile, my sister continued flaunting the extravagant plans. Her fiancé, arrogant and dismissive, talked about luxury venues, designer dresses, and celebrity DJs. They thought I was powerless, waiting in the wings. They didn't realize the storm I was preparing, quietly but meticulously. Step 1 involved securing a venue they couldn't imagine. A hidden rooftop with views of the city skyline, exclusive catering, and an elegant setup. My mom would never know until the last moment. The irony was delicious. I had always followed rules, been obedient, and now I would rewrite them to my advantage. Next, I reached out to my photographer, someone who had worked with high-profile clients. I instructed him to create a narrative, capturing moments that would leave my family stunned. Every image would tell a story of preparation, elegance, and my triumph over neglect. As the days passed, my anticipation grew. I had prepared invitations, each one carefully worded to draw my closest friends and those in my family who truly cared about fairness and honesty. I sent them with a subtle message: join me to celebrate love, integrity, and surprises. The day of the wedding arrived. My sister's celebration was in full swing, lavish and chaotic. I watched through the window as she paraded in designer couture. But my focus was elsewhere. I was calm, collected, and ready to unveil my masterpiece. I entered my venue, greeted by warm smiles, the soft melody of a string quartet, and a breathtaking skyline view. My friends were there, my closest relatives, and a few surprises I had invited secretly. Everyone looked around in awe. I took a deep breath, savoring the moment of quiet victory. When my parents finally arrived, expecting a simple acknowledgement of my sidelined status, they were greeted by the grandeur they had assumed I could never pull off. My mom's eyes widened, my father's jaw tightened, and my sister looked as though she might faint. The silence spoke volumes. I smiled gently. "Welcome," I said. "I wanted a private ceremony too, and I hope you enjoy it." Each word was deliberate, calm, and devastating in its subtlety. The shock of seeing me thrive despite their attempts to sideline me was palpable. Guests whispered among themselves, taking in the elegance, the attention to detail, and the obvious effort behind every choice. Word spread fast. My sister's friends started realizing the scale of what I had done. She, who had expected to outshine me, now saw the unexpected. As the reception unfolded, I noticed my parents exchanging glances. The subtle guilt was evident. My father's pride in my sister suddenly clashed with the realization that he had underestimated me all along. My mother's smile was strained. She had never imagined I would turn the tables so flawlessly. By the end of the evening, I had achieved what I set out to do. The financial independence I had maintained, the foresight I had exercised, and the meticulous planning had paid off. My wedding was elegant, intimate, and utterly unforgettable. It wasn't about revenge in the destructive sense. It was about proving my worth, my capabilities, and my independence. I shared a quiet moment with Mia, who had been my rock throughout. "They'll never see this coming again," she whispered. I nodded. They underestimated me, just like I expected. But I didn't just survive. I thrived. And as my parents finally approached, struggling to find words, I simply smiled. The best revenge wasn't about shaming or punishing, it was about becoming everything they had refused to recognize. Confident, independent, and unshakably poised, they thought I was powerless. But what happened next would leave my family speechless. The morning after my wedding, my phone buzzed relentlessly, emails, messages, even missed calls from relatives who had been too polite to mention the scale of my event. I sipped my coffee calmly. Knowing exactly what had just unfolded, my parents were beginning to realize that the control they assumed they had over me had slipped through their fingers. I decided it was time to address the subtle slights that had plagued my entire life. The gifts I had given quietly, the loans I had extended without ever asking for repayment, all had gone unnoticed. But now, the tables were turned. I would remind them, gently yet unmistakably, of the respect and acknowledgement I deserved. I arranged a small, private brunch with my parents. Under the guise of catching up after the wedding, their expressions were strained, trying to mask the embarrassment of being outdone. My sister, of course, was not invited. She didn't need to witness this particular chapter of revelation. Sitting across from them, I offered a serene smile. "I hope you enjoyed the wedding," I said, letting the words linger. My father's throat tightened and my mother avoided eye contact. This was exactly the moment I had envisioned. The realization that underestimating me had consequences. I casually mentioned the investments I had made from the money I had saved. They had never considered my financial acumen seriously, always assuming I was frivolous or incapable. Now, I detailed the meticulous planning, the vendor negotiations, and the exclusive touches that had made the wedding exceptional. Each sentence was a gentle sting, a reminder that I had mastered independence. Their eyes widened and my father finally muttered, We had no idea." My smile softened. "Exactly," I said. "For years, I've supported this family quietly, and now it's time my achievements are seen." The subtle power shift was now undeniable. Meanwhile, my sister called, outraged and confused. She didn't understand how a side event could outshine her lavish celebration. I listened as she ranted, her voice dripping with frustration and disbelief. I responded calmly, almost cheerfully. "Sometimes the unexpected is the most memorable." Her boyfriend tried to intervene, smug and condescending. But even he faltered when he realized that I had orchestrated every detail flawlessly. The irony was delicious. I had spent months planning, and the result was a silent but resounding victory over the very people who thought they could diminish me. I took a moment to reflect on my journey, the years of being overlooked, the moments of subtle favoritism toward my sister, and the countless occasions where my contributions went unrecognized, had all led me here. My triumph wasn't just financial or logistical, it was emotional. A reclamation of dignity and self-respect. By mid-afternoon, word of my wedding's elegance had circulated through the extended family. Compliments poured in, not just for the venue or decorations, but for my poise, grace, and capability. Even distant relatives who had doubted me were compelled to acknowledge my success. I realized the ultimate revenge wasn't in embarrassing anyone, it was in showcasing my strength. Without malice, every detail, from the intimate decor to the curated guest list, reflected not spite but refinement, intelligence, and resilience. My parents, who had underestimated me, now had no choice but to admire the woman I had become. The following week, my sister attempted to upstage me again. I remained calm. Having anticipated her move, I sent her a polite message, hinting that she could learn a few lessons from my planning. She seethed and I smiled. The best victories are often the ones observed silently, creating reflection rather than confrontation. Finally, I invited my closest friends over for a casual dinner, sharing stories and laughter. The energy was light, joyful, and utterly satisfying. This was my celebration, not just of a wedding, but of proving that underestimation has consequences and that respect is earned, not demanded. I ended the day with a quiet message to my parents. "Thank you for letting me find my own way. I hope you enjoyed witnessing it." The tone was polite, but the impact was profound. They understood, without me needing to elaborate, that I had achieved exactly what I intended. And as night fell, I reflected on the power of preparation, patience, and self-belief. My sister's extravagance had blinded her to the finer art of subtle triumph. And I, who had once been overlooked, had emerged as the undeniable star of my own story. This was only the beginning. The best revenge, after all, is living well and thriving, turning past neglect into a showcase of personal victory. Every detail had been intentional and every smile, every glance, every whisper of awe had been earned. Their arrogance had finally met its match, and what happened next would change the family forever. The morning after the brunch with my parents, I awoke with a sense of calm satisfaction. The subtle victories of yesterday had set the tone for the coming days. I sipped my tea, thinking through the next steps of my plan. Every gesture, every word, every detail had been carefully calculated. My sister's phone call came as expected. She tried to mask her frustration, but I could hear it in her tone. "How did you pull all this off without us noticing?" she demanded. I smiled faintly, replying, "Sometimes being underestimated is the greatest advantage." Her gasp was almost audible through the line. Meanwhile, I began documenting everything. Every gift, every effort, every contribution I had made over the years. This wasn't just about money, it was about recognition, about establishing that my efforts mattered. My parents had ignored this before, but now they were witnesses. I scheduled a casual dinner at my apartment, inviting only a few key family members who had influence but were unaware of the entire story. The arrangement was subtle yet commanding. Each place setting, each dish, each detail reflected the sophistication and careful thought that had gone into this evening. As my parents arrived, I could see the subtle tension. They had realized that the power dynamics had shifted. My father's eyes flickered nervously as he noticed the elegance of the setup. My mother attempted to compliment casually, but it rang hollow. They were beginning to see that I had taken control of the narrative. My sister arrived late as expected. She tried to assert dominance, making loud, dismissive comments. I responded with quiet grace, allowing her words to hang in the air, unsupported by action. The contrast between my calm authority and her anxious energy was palpable. During dinner, I shared stories of past achievements, mentioning the small but significant ways I had ensured the family's success. Each anecdote highlighted my independence, my foresight, and my diligence. My parents shifted uncomfortably, realizing that the child they had underestimated had become the linchpin of many family successes. My sister tried to interrupt, attempting to diminish my accomplishments. I simply smiled, letting her frustration show to the others. The room was filled with subtle gasps and knowing looks. My friends and selected family members recognized the careful orchestration behind every move. After dessert, I presented a final gesture, a detailed account of all the contributions I had quietly made over the years. The document was comprehensive and undeniable. My parents read through it, their expressions shifting from shock to reluctant admiration. "This I had no idea," my father muttered. His voice was subdued, a mix of embarrassment and awe. My mother nodded silently, realizing that her favoritism toward my sister had blinded her to my own worth. I then turned to my sister, who was pale with frustration. "Sometimes it takes being overlooked to truly understand what's been done," I said calmly. She opened her mouth but no words came. Her boyfriend muttered something under his breath, and even he looked uneasy, realizing that the spotlight had shifted. Over the next few days, word spread through extended family and acquaintances. Compliments poured in, not only for my elegance and planning but for the clear demonstration of intelligence, patience, and strategic thinking. Even distant relatives who had doubted me could no longer ignore my accomplishments. Watching my sister grapple with the realization that she had underestimated me, she attempted to recreate some of the success I had shown but lacked the subtlety, the planning, and the foresight that had made my approach powerful. Every move she made highlighted the difference between chaos and calculated execution. One allowed a few small, orchestrated accidents to occur, minor setbacks that subtly reinforced my capabilities. My parents, though hesitant to admit it, began to rely on my judgment for important decisions. The recognition I had longed for was finally coming, but without confrontation or malice. By the end of the week, the entire family dynamic had shifted. I had achieved what many thought impossible, turning underestimation into acknowledgement. Respect was earned, quietly but unmistakably. Every small gesture, every carefully planned event, every quiet contribution had culminated in this moment of triumph. Finally, I sent a message to my parents: "Thank you for allowing me to show what I can do. I hope you now see the value in every effort, every decision, and every moment of patience I've invested." Their silence was affirmation. They understood fully, without me needing to add anything. This chapter was a reminder: the most powerful revenge isn't public shaming or confrontation. It's quiet, calculated, and rooted in self-improvement. It's about becoming the person your detractors thought you could never be. Every detail, every moment, every gesture reflected mastery, resilience, and strength. And as the evening closed, I reflected on the journey, the underestimation, the favoritism, the small slights. All of it had been transformed into a demonstration of power, grace, and dignity. My family had witnessed the transformation firsthand, unable to deny the brilliance of what I had created.